Welcome back to the podcast. This is a very unusual show today. I have with me Joe Crow, and we were actually waiting for somebody else to do taping with us. And we've been sitting here for about half an hour or so at least. I'm like, you know what, Joe, we're both skilled enough. Let's just tape a show on the fly and let's just see how it goes. And we thought we'd talk about some of the crossovers that have been going on in DC in the past and in the present. The Rebirth Initiative, which was good, and you gotta give DC credit for creativity for figuring out a way to merge the New 52 Superman with the Lois Lane Clark Kent marriage Superman. Joe,
Yes, I read all of those. I followed it month to month as reading previews and stuff, but when they all came out as collections and graphic novels, I got the whole thing. And that is the like Bruce Lee martial arts mastery level of superhero continuity. And I believe Dan Jurgens was the writer. And the juggling, the twisting, the it worked. Every bit of it worked.
because
And it,
yeah, go on, go on, go ahead.
so talk about taking chicken, making chicken salad out of what that was. I was I the new 52 was such a disappointment for me. Personally, I recognize that there are fans. That's
No,
cool, man. Trying to yuck anybody's yum, but
I was reading some of the DC stuff right up to that reboot, and they have some really good stuff going in their titles and some really good
Mhm.
stuff. People are still mad with that, but
Yeah,
they gutted so much of the DC mythos for 5 or 6 years because whatever reason.
I was super involved in a lot of local promotions with my local comic book store. I was doing podcasts and game shows and all kinds of appearances with them. And we did a midnight debut of that first issue of JLA, of the new 52 Justice League, which was supposed to be welcome to this new rebooted thing. And it was 20 something pages of what? With no explanation. And I bought in so hard based on what I thought was going to happen, and none of it happened.
Yeah, I hate it. And I'm the biggest cheerleader of when it comes to comic books, but I really did not
Me,
like. I did not like the whole New 52 and the Lois and Clark that we knew in the 90s with the death of Superman came back in Convergence, and people were like, ooh. And that's what John Kent was originally uh,
yeah,
born. And so you have that whole thing. And then, excuse me, they did the Adventures of Lois and Clark, which was Superman in hiding. And again, they killed out the New 52 Superman and the New 52 Lois Lane. And in a way, it was convoluted. But like at the end of the thing, we still had our Clark and Lois from pre-crisis in there. They made it all
yeah.
work somehow. And I thought Doomsday Clock was interesting, but they dropped the ball on that somewhere along the lines. They had a switch in creative focus and what they wanted to do. Is that fair to say for you?
I think so too. And we certainly don't have to waste
No.
podcast minutes on trying to figure it out because the rabbit hole of the Jeff Johns era and all that stuff, who the heck knows? But DC Rebirth basically said we made a bad call. And it seemed like DC Rebirth was the first inkling of, okay, let's get our ducks back in a row. And I mean, things happened at that point too, but convergence, like you said, when that they realized, oh, we've got something here. And then the overall coolness of the story of John Kent, the little character who they had never gone all in before on a married Superman and Lois with a child. They never done that. They plenty of parallel Earth stuff, but never here's a kid. What might happen?
He's
And they,
Superboy in that, and it was very cool because Superman and Lois Lane introduced him to here's Superboy, and you had this really cool kid Superboy outfit. I'm like, oh, that's really cool.
Mhm.
And you gave Clark and Lois a kid. I'm like, oh, that's so fucking awesome. Excuse my language. But I thought that was really good. I really liked that.
I liked that they seeded Watchmen in it. And at first I thought, wait a minute, why are you messing with Watchmen? And then I thought, why not mess with Watchmen? Okay, I see where it goes. And then we got to so anyway, but the continuity kung fu that they created with bringing Superman back away from the New 52 Superman. And I remember there's one issue of Justice League where they tried to make sense of it, where the New 52 League is our Superman is dead. And then the old guy comes back with a beard and he goes, no, I'm Superman. It's fine. Don't worry about it. And they're like, but Superman we know was in a relationship with Wonder Woman. And he goes, that's gross. Why would I do that? Why would a Superman? Anyway,
You have Firestorm coming out now. You have a new Legion reboot, which you haven't had since New 52. So it's like you got some really good things coming with DC. And then we recently have this KO. This is it Knockout? Is that how we is it called DC Knockout? Is that what it is?
I think you think that, but then you read it and KO stands for King Omega.
We started this podcast because we were going to do another taping, and Joe Crow and I decided we're just going to start talking about DC crossover. We talked about Dawn, whatever, and lo and behold, like the groundhog who saw his shadow, up pops our missing guest, Bobby Nash. And Bobby now screwed this up because when this goes, I was going to put this out when we talk about Joe and Bobby did a Kirby taping. I was going to make this Joe Crow talking about this. So Bobby
My work
Nash.
here is done.
So
Yep.
Bobby, we were talking just in general about some of the DC crossovers and events and things. And you said you're not into KO, are you?
I haven't read any of it.
No problem, Bobby. I thought you were a comic book connoisseur.
I am mostly these days. I'm reading. I never thought this would happen to me, but I've turned into the wait for the trade guy.
Yeah.
So I am more of a Marvel guy than a DC guy. But here lately, crossovers have they don't sound like they have appealed to me.
Is that in
So
general?
yeah, just in general, like I see a crossover and just go, yeah, that's not doing it for me.
So
It
what do you
just doesn't sound interesting.
So did and I am the biggest cheerleader of comic books. And before we were taping, I talked about not about with Joe how I don't like being negative and being having toxic people
Yeah.
and all the. But I loathe that X-Men crossover that happened for 3 months. I thought it was the biggest waste of paper and create talent. Did you have opinion, Mr. Marvel fan here, Bobby Nash?
I didn't actually read the crossover, so I don't know.
Are you even in this conversation, Bobby?
I do remember now in the past I have the first crossover DC crossover that I remember wasn't a big event like company wide, but it was when the Justice League used to do the Justice League JSA
Oh yeah.
multi episode crossovers, and I remember those. I forget the issue numbers, but the first one I read, like George Perez was doing the art. I remember I had George Perez
Yes.
covers, and Dark Side was a big part of it, and I remember loving those. And so I enjoyed stories where the characters interacted and crossed over, and I've enjoyed many crossovers and events over the years. I'm just burned out on them at the moment. So
Do you
and,
think
and
that
because sometimes it's weird when I'm reading, like I am reading the X-Men trade that Gail Simone writes, and I
Oh
know
yeah.
at one point it goes into the event, and then you keep reading and it's and this happened.
And
is
then now
So
we're
Gail
back. Yeah.
is Gail Simone the one doing the Rogue in Louisiana with Canvas? Is
yes,
that do you
yes,
like that series?
I do. I'm enjoying that.
That is my
It's
favorite.
it's
That is my favorite X-Men series right now.
yeah.
I really like that dynamic.
I like. I kind of the X because she's putting the X-Men in a situation we don't normally see them in, a horror situation.
But
Okay.
still be a
And
family with these kids.
so I'm really enjoying that. I love Gail's work. I think Gail is fantastic. And so
Yeah.
she in this particular instance they really are a fish out of water because this is not the kind of stuff the X-Men normally deal with.
And you see everybody from Jubilee to Wolverine,
Mhm.
she's taking a paternal role in these
Mhm.
teenagers, which is cool. because they're very protective of these kids that we don't really even a year and a half into the thing, we don't know a whole lot about them.
What's an X-Man?
Yeah, what's an X-Man?
X what?
And then when we go back to the DC stuff, Bobby goes, Bobby, wake up. Come on, Bobby. But my favorite of the new X-Men kids is the Deathstorm kid, the little goth boy. He seems to have some really unique stuff because at the same time, he's sweet. But when his powers kick in, he's like a really demonic, crazy kind of kid. He's out there and whatever. Do you remember Rebirth? Don't you, Bobby?
Yes.
Did you feel that Rebirth overall, after you read that big one shot? Because I was telling Joe before you came on that my favorite scene was where Barry and Wally came together, and Barry's like, "How could I ever forget you? You know, how did I?" And I, oh, that was such a cool scene. And we were talking because of all the behind the scenes things going on with DC and the stewardship by the corporate people. They dropped the ball after the Rebirth one shot in a lot of ways. Is that a fair thing to say, Bobby? What would you think?
Plus, yeah, I read little bits of Rebirth. I like the idea. Sometimes these events, for me, it just feels like it's the event, then we forget it when we go to the next one.
Yeah.
As you were saying, it's kind of like, oh, we had this big event. Life goes back to normal. We forget that happened.
That was
we
my
do
whole
this next event.
That was my whole point with KO right now. When they did Absolute Power, you had ramifications of what happened. That was you had a lot of good stuff that happened, but it's like KO. It's like, what's the big payoff? How much of the status quo are you going to change?
What I remember hearing about KO and the DC universe was before the Absolute universe started, before those series started, was we're removing, like, we're at a point with Darkseid. We're moving him out of the deal for a little bit. And so now it's a year later and they're like, oh, wait, here's Darkseid again. And I'm like, I get it. Darkseid's cool. But you said you were going to give us a break. And now KO is like, oh, Darkseid. Anyway, I'll wait till it's finished. But if the whole point of it is a bunch of characters just fight, Superman's going to win that, or Batman's going to win that.
Depends on who's writing it.
Exactly.
The only go on.
Oh, I was going to say, yeah, because I don't know anything about KO, but that one you mentioned before, was it All Access? Is that the one where everybody's powers shift?
Yeah.
So I was reading Mark Waid's Justice League, is the follow-up to all that. So that's how I found out all that happened.
The only thing I can see coming out of KO is that Superman disappears because all the Superboys take over the titles in March. So we have now Reign of the Superboys. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
They're going to call it Reign of the Superboys? Okay, yeah, I'm in.
Yeah. Because we have Superboy Kal-El in action. One is taking over, Connor's taking one, and Superboy Prime is taking over the other one. Ooh. So it's called the Reign of the Superboys. But, Bobby, what are some of your favorite crossovers over the years?
Oh, goodness. Yeah, when I started getting into comics was in the 80s, mid 80s, probably 84, 85-ish. So some of the first crossovers I saw was Crisis on Infinite Earths and Secret Wars were probably the first ones. And that was at a time where it was like, mom had to buy my comics because I wasn't old enough to have a job or anything like that. So it was like, when your mom's only going to let you get one book a month, you get the one with as many characters in it as you can.
Exactly.
And so I discovered like Secret Wars, which I enjoyed. It's not a great story, but it was cool seeing all of those characters together.
Because the crossovers lead you like, who's that guy? Me buy things with him in it or her.
Yeah, I would love to. Yeah, I'd love to see. Yeah, I don't know who that is. Let me, And that worked better for Secret Wars than it did for Crisis, because the only DC I was reading when Crisis started was New Teen Titans. That was the only DC I was reading at the time. Some friends turned me onto that, and of course I fell in love with that, Wolfman and Perez. And so I discovered they're doing this thing called Crisis. And so there were a lot of characters in Crisis. I had no idea who they were. The problem was, if I fell in love with characters, they're dead. There's no new books from those. There's no new books with these guys coming.
Secret Wars is, look at all these new people that you can read about. But Crisis is like, oh, you like this guy, huh?
Yeah.
I was probably 16, 17, 18 years old when Crisis came out. And I was at the time annoyed that all the stuff that I've read for like the last 10 or 15 years was completely wiped out and never existed, let alone somebody that's been reading it for since the 60s. It's kind of like the middle finger to the fan. These never happened. And you can just start over from scratch. And I don't like when people reboot things and just ignore it. And now DC is embracing all of our kooky continuities and everything that we have ever done. We're figuring a way to make it work. And you got to give him credit for bringing the Huntress in from the Earth 2 version of Huntress. That's the daughter of Bruce Wayne and Catwoman from the future. I thought that was a great thing. I really like that. I've never, in no disrespect to Craig, I have never bought the Huntress
mobster stuff. Shit, that could be anybody.
Yeah, the only thing throughout all of this, the only thing that never gets affected, which kind of irks me, is the Batman mythos. They never get touched. They're always the same. Oh, we can screw over your Flash fans, whether Barry Allen, whatever.
Oh, you like Wally West, do you?
We're going to put Wally West in, put Barry out, Wally in. But it's like Superman or Batman, they never change anything up. And you can go back 10, 15, 20 years, and it's the same stuff. And I like my Batman stuff, but now it's almost like a schizophrenic because none of the Batman titles link up. They're all in their own little, and not even Wonder Woman links up. Love what he's doing with Wonder Woman. Don't get me wrong. And some of this, but it's like there's no connection to Wonder Woman, or even the Birds of Prey, for example. There's no connection at all when they were going on to the greater scheme of DC stuff. Whereas Flash, Aquaman, and Green Lantern just goes wholeheartedly into all these wonky stuff that's going on. We're talking about Joe. They did Crisis because they thought that the Earth mythos back then was just too complicated. 40 years later, we got the scorecard. Okay, let's see what happened in Aquaman. Okay, then this connects over here in Justice League. And, let's not forget about the Atom Project over here. And, we got the Dark Legion. You need a score. And let's not forget about how Absolute connects into all the new DC stuff, too. You would think
Bobby, I was talking before you came on about the Superman thing, which he just mentioned when they merged the new 52 Superman with the pre-crisis or post-crisis Superman and Lois, like the married Superman and Lois. That is the most impressive feat of continuity martial arts that I have seen in top 5 ever. Like Dan Jurgens put it all together, and I think in one issue when they resolved it all, first of all, part of it was Mr. Mxyzptlk's fault. And of course it was, because screw that guy. But he was just the wacky dude who was never taken seriously until Alan Moore's Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow. And then they finally Dan Jurgens said, you know what? He's super powerful and he could do something like this. So the deal they worked him into it. And Mxyzptlk was just mad. So he screwed up continuity. And then they undid it. And it was, and much like Barry and Wally going, Barry going, how could I ever forget you? When they smushed it all back together and they showed little clips of Perry White babysitting little John Kent. Because that didn't happen, but now it did. And it should have, like they smooshed it all together. And I'm like, this is how it should have been the whole time. Yeah. And I dug it.
I think too, as he was saying, they thought people were confused. I never met anyone who was confused.
Nope.
By the multi-Earths.
I was so lucky, but this is true of anybody. It doesn't matter when you start reading comic books. When I started reading comic books at 10 years, about 77, 78, doesn't matter what crap that they put out. It was all golden age stuff. It was always the best stuff. You look at it back now and you can't do no wrong. But back then I got all the Earth 2, Earth 1 and loved it and ate into that and had no problem with all that stuff. And now you're like 85. It's too confusing. And speaking of crossovers and continuities and stuff, when Bendis came in and revamped Superman and had all those little things, do you think if editorial mandates would have said, let's be a little more cohesive with what's going on, some of the Bendis stuff might have come off better in DC?
I think so. I think Bendis coming on Superman, it was such a big deal.
Bendis is at Marvel. It's kind of like Kirby at DC. When Jack Kirby went to DC, it's like, we got Kirby, but we don't know what to do with him.
The same thing with Bendis.
And Bendis did some of these really things and he made fans hate Superman, what he was doing. One of the worst things they ever did was aging John Kent to a teenager. And the way they did that,
Yeah.
I thought was the crappiest, worst thing you could do to the Superman mythos. And don't get me wrong, I bring that up because it looks like coming up, he's getting de-aged again.
Yeah. And it's
I
amazing
think that
too how the kids and sidekicks age more. Like Dick Grayson was a 10, 12-year-old, who
And
is now
suddenly
he's in his 20s, but
Yeah.
Batman didn't get any older.
Yeah.
But I tell you, the one thing that Crisis did that I think worked in their favor, because this is what happened to me after Crisis, you had George Perez on Wonder Woman, you had John Byrne on Superman, and you had Frank Miller on Batman. And as a Marvel guy, I ate that shit up.
Yeah.
I was like,
These were my
you know
Marvel
what?
guys.
These are my guys. I love these guys on the other books I've read. I go to DC and I start learning more about DC and picking up things from that. So, in that respect, because I do know it pissed off a lot of older fans. What do you mean my Superman doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah.
But as for me as a 13, 14-year-old when that started, oh my God, this is awesome. I can go in not having to know what happened 12 years ago in issue 112.
Yeah.
I adore those early post-crisis runs, as the Wonder Woman, the Batman, the Superman. I adore those stories.
And as Flash, those
Wally
first.
West, yeah, taking over as the Flash. We were getting all these wonderful stories that I could pick up without having to have that backstory. But yeah, I understand how it could rub older fans the wrong way. But I embraced it. And since then, we've lived through multiple
Yeah.
rebirths at DC, the multiple crises, multiple New 52, Hyper Time, blah, blah, blah. Some worked better than others. I enjoyed a little bit the New 52 because I liked that they were
you're
trying.
banned. No more Bobby
Yeah.
Nash shows.
Well,
You're
no,
banned after this.
I liked that they were trying something new.
I appreciated the attempt.
I don't think it was successful. I didn't necessarily like what they did, but I appreciated the attempt to make it better. There were some books that came out of that, like that whole 1 year later jump. I thought the Superman books, especially.
1 year later was actually before 52.
But I did enjoy that. But yeah, I appreciated that they were trying something.
See,
yeah.
My thing with the New 52 is right before them. Then you have some really cool things going on. All these things were actually you just had the Final Crisis. They had Brightest Day, Blackest Night. Mm-hmm. You have some really big DC things going on, and JSA and all these things. And then all of a sudden you put the brakes on and going reset. And I think over the years, you guys can chirp in, but at the same time, they managed to make it more cohesively connect without ignoring their things. Where Marvel, my whole thing is Spider-Man would have my Spider-Man would have never made a deal with the devil in the first place. And to me, that's lazy storytelling.
With Marvel, they just push through.
Yeah.
DC's, okay, stop, throw everything out, and let's try again.
And then we'll bring it in and figure out a way to make it work.
I agree on the deal with the devil, although technically Spider-Man didn't make the deal. Mary Jane did.
You're
right.
Fucking wives. Who needs?
I'm not listening, Bobby. I'm the host. You're supposed to agree with me, Bobby. I'm the host.
But I will say that was a lazy storytelling thing.
Yes.
Because they used it as she made the deal, so that goes away. We can just Harry can be alive. We can just start going, we'll just change everything. And it didn't work.
Like today, for I don't know, maybe the last 5 or 6 years, they've done this redemption of Norman Osborn. And he's buddy with Peter Parker. And I'm like, I don't care what universe I live in. There's no way that Peter Parker would ever forgive Norman Osborn for killing Gwen Stacy. I don't care never, ever would that ever happen. There's no way that man would ever forgive. And now there was a recent episode, J. Jonah, almost by J. Jonah being the fatherly figure, but they had a scene between JJ and Norman, and I'm like, this does not even feel right at all. They're talking about Peter as his long lost son, and I'm like, no, you should hate Norman Osborn to the core. You don't make him a friend.
Even Jonah, Jonah has done some reprehensible things
Yeah.
to try to kill and stop spy. Yeah, I can maybe look past them, but I can't let it go. Somebody
Right.
tries to kill me, I'm going to remember that for the rest of my
I'm going to be
life.
like, hey, remember that time?
You sick spider slayers on me. And that's wacky fun. No, you tried to kill me.
The last big thing I want to talk about the crossovers is which I think is a messy thing, is all the Imperial things are going on right now with where they're resetting their cosmic stuff. And
Yeah.
now Peter's out there, and you got Norman Osborn as a Peter Parker in New York, and Peter's some kind of space guy out, and I'm like, oh, and they're like, this is the countdown to Amazing Spider-Man 1000. I'm like, I've got what, 25 more issues, and you're doing it every 2 weeks. Don't get me wrong, but oh my god, I'm counting down for this all to be over with, not for some big payoff. And I'm like,
Yeah.
ah. So
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure after issue 1000, there will be a reset.
yes,
Creative team will start over.
I got to give Hulk and Thor credit because when they redo these things, they actually take the characters in a new direction. Because like the Avengers run is getting ready to end, and a new team is coming on. But I'm like, you just had a lackluster run of Avengers where the last, I don't know, 3 years, nothing really happened, and there were some good stories. Don't get me wrong, but Avengers haven't been. Where Fantastic Four, to me, Fantastic Four has been on a roll.
Now, I am really enjoying Ryan North's FF.
We did the one before that.
Dan Slott. Yeah, Dan Slott.
Dan Slott. Oh, they're really doing a good job of embracing the FF mythos. You know, they finally married Ben. They gave Ben kids. He adopted the Skrull and the Kree kids, and to see him being a dad and Franklin and even Valor. Oh my God, we're not done yet. What do y'all think about the Doom crap that they just spent the last 9 months on?
I haven't read any of that yet. I did see some of the aftermath in the last FF trade I read, so I know there's some stuff happening. But you mentioned the kids, and real quick about that. I was so afraid because Dan Slott introduced the thing with Ben and Alicia adopting those kids. My fear was that the next writer would go, I hate that, and they would be gone.
Yep.
And I'm so appreciative that they've kept that.
Yep.
I love that. Because the FF has that family dynamic, always has. I love that they're doing that.
I really liked the Valeria and Uncle Doom dynamics that have been around forever. Okay.
Yeah.
And that played into some of the Doom stuff. But to me, it felt like it went against the grain of the character. And you have some interesting things and dynamics, and they do meet up during the Doom thing, and he explains it, and she understands it, but I'm like, you counter to this whole Doom Valeria relationship, which is very unique because it makes Doom really, he is the godfather of Valeria. And in Valeria's eyes, Doom don't do no bad. He can, and she's the only one that when all the shit's going hit the fan, she's the only one that can reach Doom.
I dig that whole thing.
Because you guys haven't read it yet, what ends up happening does involve Valeria, and I'm like, it reminds me of the Jonah and Norman stuff. Is you're going counter to years of what you should be doing. Because in Emperor Doom, one of the things he does is he takes a lot of the Latverias and holds them hostage and uses their life forces to give them more magic powers.
Oh, sure.
And when, Uncle Doom, you really shouldn't be doing that, he wouldn't want to disappoint her. That's really his moral compass. And some of the Emperor Doom stuff didn't make sense, but they ended it. I'm like, oh, you just spent 9 months. All you did is set up for the next big event, which is Armageddon in the summer.
And there's different versions of Doom depending on who writes him.
Yes.
Sometimes Doom, they play him like the mustache twirling villain.
Like during Fantastic Four with Byrne. But Fantastic Four, like during Lee and Kirby and that type of thing.
But I also liked the fact that for the longest time, even though he was a villain, he loved the people in Latveria.
Yes.
Was to
Bobby, you and I touched on that when we talked about Byrne's run, because in Fantastic Four 200, there was the ultimate battle between Reed Richards and Dr. Doom. And Byrne brings it back and goes, we need Doom back because these people are just screwed without Doom, and they actually inadvertently bring Doom back as the ruler of Latveria.
Yeah.
Bobby Nash, Joe Crow, I don't even know how I'm going to title this episode because we crossed over. And you know what? This is Bobby Nash's fault because Joe and I were on a good tangent of talking about crossovers and things. And then you had to come in and ruin the party, Bobby.
And there's your title. Bobby Nash ruins this podcast.
Oh, that's exactly what I'm going to use. Bobby, Joe, we're going to end this show because we have another show to tape.
Thank you.
Fun. Thanks, guys.